Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 15th virtual event of New Conversations 2.0 initiative, which is a virtual tour building on the 2018 Provincial Awareness Tour around the demographic and labor market realities facing the province. We're visiting 15 different regions, and this is our last one, bringing forward labor market replacement data, information on the importance of immigration to New Brunswick's public finances, as well as the impacts of future immigration on key systems in our province, and the imperative for local governments and communities to organize in support of immigration at a local level. We're also making the space for people, employers, community members, newcomers to share their stories and experiences of immigration. People are coming into our province, and everyone has a role to play in the creation of communities and workplaces where notions of diversity, inclusion, and equity are valued and at the heart of policies, processes, and planning. Immigration is an evolving issue in New Brunswick, and new conversations are still needed to ensure that our new residents are finding meaningful opportunities and support for them to choose to call New Brunswick and your communities home. Today, we dedicate this session to Chipman. Before we dive in, I would like to acknowledge the unceded Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy territories we currently stand on, and wish to thank them for allowing us to gather. To recognize the land is an expression of our gratitude to those whose territory we're on, and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on the land and to honor that history as we continue to welcome new families to these lands and work together towards reconciliation. I would also like to recognize our funders and partner organizations, the folks that are making this happen. The Government of New Brunswick and Working NB, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, the New Brunswick Business Council, the Association francophone des municipalités du Nouveau-Brunswick, the Conseil économique du Nouveau-Brunswick, Tech Impact, Dialogue NB, the Réseau en immigration francophone du Nouveau-Brunswick, the Coopérative de développement régional, the Human Rights Commission, the University of New Brunswick, the University of Moncton, NBCC, CCNB, and for this particular event, I would really like to thank the Town of Chipman, the Newcomer Settlement Program, and Irving. And finally, before introducing our special speakers for today, I have the obligation to set some ground rules and mention some housekeeping items to ensure that it's a productive experience for everybody, including you, our audience. First, a presentation will be shared with you from our resident economist, David Campbell. We'll move on to a brief Q&A and a panel, followed by a discussion, and we will be ending the event for today. So it really is made up of three parts. During the Q&A as well as the discussion period, you'll be able to engage with questions and comments in the chat function within Zoom. As a facilitator, I will be picking a few and asking them. However, you also have the ability to chime in person. And to do so, please use the raise hand function, and I will mention your name and tell you when you can ask a question or share a comment. We ask that you keep your microphones on mute unless told otherwise, in order for us to avoid any background noise or sound feedback. We also encourage you to turn on your cameras. It's always nicer to see faces, and it makes for a much more meaningful engagement. If we have any tech interruptions, please stay with us. It's always a risk when we're trying to do something like this live, but hopefully we'll be avoiding any disruption this evening. And with that, I would like to happily introduce the Mayor of Chipman, Mayor Atkinson, to share his remarks. Your Worship, the screen is yours.
I'm just trying to make sure. Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, welcome to all of the people participating. How many are we tonight, by the way, total? Right now. I can't hear you.
We're 33.
33, great. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Village of Chipman. I won't do my little introduction at this point in time, except to say we are very much involved in the newcomer settlement issue, multicultural association supports, and all of that kind of thing forthcoming. And we are excited about the process. You'll see behind me, basically our strategic planning process, which obviously started before we had any newcomers to invite, but that was part of our plan. So once again, welcome on behalf of the Village of Chipman to our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, for being with us today and for your leadership and support. And with that, I would like to now introduce one of our leading economists in the province, Mr. David Campbell. David is the former chief economist of the New Brunswick Jobs Board and founded his own economic development consulting and research firm, Jupia Consultants, Inc., in 2008. Based in Moncton, he is one of Atlantic Canada's leading economic development consultants. He has worked with more than 80 local, provincial, and national economic development agencies, industry associations, and government departments in 6 Canadian provinces and 2 American states. Good evening, David, and thank you so much for being with us tonight. The screen is yours to share your presentation.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm glad to be here with you. Let me just pop open my presentation. All right, so hopefully everybody can see that. If you can't, just yell at me or make some motions. So yeah, this is number 15 of 15, so I guess we saved the best for last. We've been going around the province talking about, primarily talking about the implications of the current population trajectory for New Brunswick, but specific to 15 regions across the province. So basically, if our population continues on the current trend, what does that mean in terms of the workforce, and what does that potentially mean in terms of our industries and our school population and public finances and other issues, as Nicole mentioned earlier? So my presentation is probably only going to take about 20 minutes. I'm going to talk firstly a little bit about the demographic situation specific to Queens County. We did not focus right in on the town of Chipman because the data on migration, immigration, and other factors is, and the annual data is really only at the county level. But in the question and answer period, if you want to ask specific questions, I can try to answer related to Chipman or Minto or any individual community in the county. So we'll start out with the demographic challenge. So I think a lot of this is known to most people in the meeting here tonight, but basically New Brunswick as a whole is aging much faster than the rest of Canada. So these are what are called population pyramids, and they basically show the age, the percentage of the population or the number of the population by age group. And you can see that New Brunswick's population is much more clustered in the 55 and up range compared to the province or the country overall. The country overall has a higher proportion of its population in the younger age groups. Now, Canada is also facing demographic challenges nationally, but because of a big wave of immigration over the last 15 to 20 years, it's reduced the impact across country relative to New Brunswick. This chart is just showing the population growth over the last 10 years by age cohort or age group in Queens County. And you can see here, Queens County is the red bar, and you can see fairly steep population decline in the 15 to 24 age group, 35 to 44, and 45 to 54 age groups relative to the province. So this is really the trend that's occurring right now in the county. And then you can see similarly, the population over the age of 65 and 75 is rising fairly strongly across the county. So this demographic trend is what's driving the conversation that we're going to be having tonight. So what you see is a very tight correlation between the size and the growth in the labor force and the growth in the economy. So this chart here is showing you real economic growth, or GDP, gross domestic product growth in Canada, which is the red bar, and in New Brunswick, which is the blue bar, and the labor force growth. So across the country, the GDP growth cumulatively over the past 10 years grew by 25%, and in New Brunswick, it grew only by about 10%. And at the same time, the labor force, or the number of people working or looking for work across the country, grew fairly strongly at 6.5%, but it actually declined in New Brunswick. So this decline in the number of people active in the labor market in New Brunswick has actually held back our economic growth over the past decade. Since the recession of 2008, really, that's when it started in the province. And that's what we're trying to change by looking at immigration and looking at ways to attract more people to our province and to our communities. Yeah, so that's the same chart. Okay, so this is another way to look at that. So basically what this chart is showing is just the population aged 15 and the population aged 65 living in the county. So just one way to look at this. So you can see the bar here, the blue bar, which is the population aged 15, declining slowly but steadily, going all the way back to the early 2000s. So you can see there it peaked about 2003 and it's been slowly going down since. Whereas over the same period, the number age 65 and older has been increasing over that same period. So that gap between the red and the blue bar here is really the extent of the challenge, because more people are aging, less young people in the communities in Queens County, and that's creating pressure on the labor market and could end up hurting the economy over the next 20 years. So another way to look at that is the population age 5 to 18. So that's the school age population. And the blue bar here is showing what's happening to that population cohort in the Moncton region and Fredericton, which have attracted a lot of younger migrants. And the red bar is showing what's happening in Queens County, which hasn't had as much success in recent years attracting population. So you can see the population, the young population is rebounding and growing in Moncton and Fredericton, requiring discussions around new schools and expanding school capacity, while in Queens County, we're seeing an actual decline. Although in the last couple of years, you can see the tail end of that bar, it actually started to stabilize, which is good news for the county. So the other big issue that we've been talking about as we've been going around the province is the changing nature of the workforce across New Brunswick. So this is the breakdown of employment in New Brunswick by public sector, which includes healthcare, education, public administration, and the private sector. So the red bar is actually showing what's going on over the last 20 years in the public sector employment, and the gray bar here is showing what's going on in the private sector. So you can see, again, starting in that 2008-2009 timeframe, we started to see increases in public sector employment, even as we started to see decreases in the private sector employment. So this is one of our real challenges. If we can't grow the labor market, an increasing share of that labor is going to go to healthcare, home care, personal services, and so on to support the population, leaving not enough workers to support our export industries like natural resources, forestry, agriculture, and tourism. So this is another one of our challenges. If we can't get the workforce back to growth, that more and more of that labor will go to the public sector. And that puts a strain on public finances. Okay, the other thing, my colleague Richard Saillant, who put together this slide, has actually looked at the impact of aging on the healthcare system. And basically what he's concluded is that the baby boomer generation is turning 75 this year. There's about 70,000, a little under 70,000 of them right now across New Brunswick. That number will double to about 140,000 within the next 15 years. So that's when the boomer population reaches its peak in New Brunswick. And what Richard has determined is that's going to add about $1.1 billion to the cost of healthcare above and beyond everything else, like regular cost inflation or other cost impacts. So this is just the impact of the additional 70,000 people added over the age of 75 added to the healthcare system. So what we're really talking about here is making sure we have a strong enough economy that we can support a high quality healthcare system as more and more of our population ages. We want to make sure we have a high quality public health system to support those folks. And in order to do that, we have to have an economy that's generating a sustainable amount of tax revenue to fund that. So the good news is more and more immigrants are moving to New Brunswick and outside of the Moncton, Fredericton, and St. John area. So the majority of immigrants do settle in the big cities. So if you look at these bars here, this is 2017, 2018, and 2019. The blue part of the bar is Moncton, Fredericton, and St. John, but you can see the gray here, which is outside of all of the urban centers, and almost 1,100 people in 2019 settled in these areas. So that's good news as we look to attract more and more population around the province and not just in the largest urban center. And as I mentioned earlier, Queens County hasn't been attracting a lot of immigrants. According to Statistics Canada, about 16 settled in the county in 2019-2020. So I mentioned earlier about population growth and the K-12 education system in New Brunswick. So basically what this this section of the presentation is looking at is a document that I prepared for the Multicultural Council over a year ago, which basically forecasted what would happen to the student population in New Brunswick if we didn't attract newcomers to our province. So basically the blue here, the lower part of this bar, these bars, the blue part, is the projected enrollment in public education in New Brunswick, province-wide, just those born in the province. And you can see those numbers dropping from 90,500 in 2019-20, slowly declining every year and down to 83,900 by 2029-2030. So basically, just at a time when we need more people to join the workforce, because we have more people retiring, we have less young people in the school system. So what the gray part of this bar shows you is that if we can attract, continue to attract and grow the immigrant population in our province, that will help boost our K-12 enrollment system, because a lot of the immigrants, a majority of the immigrants settling in our province actually have young children already. So this is a difference than, say, Ontario, where a lot more single people are settling in Ontario. We are actually attracting more young families. And what that is doing is it's automatically providing students for the K-12 education system, and then ultimately a workforce as they graduate from high school in a few years and then ultimately go on to post-secondary or whatever their choices are. But we're boosting the K-12 education system by attracting newcomers and families to our province. So let me talk to you a little bit about the growth projections that we did. We did this for all 15 regions around the province. And basically we looked at the trajectory of the population now. So what does it look like between now and 2040 if nothing changes? And then we looked at, well, what if we wanted to at least keep the workforce at the same size in Queens County? And then the third scenario we looked at is, what if we actually grew the workforce, actually increased the number of people working in the county over the next 20 years? So what kind of population growth would we see in each of those three scenarios? But before I get into the three scenarios, I will say that there are reasons why we need to think about population growth in Queens County. There are a number of strategically important industries. If you think about Grand Lake timber and the forestry sector, if you think about the agriculture sector, tourism sector, there's potential new growth opportunities in the county. There's already 290 businesses that have employees located across Queens County. And there is a risk that many might leave if they can't find workers. So many of these businesses could leave, particularly in locating in the Fredericton area, if that area continues to grow. And then that forces residents of Queens County to drive into Fredericton even more to access services, reducing the value proposition for living in the county. So really, we're talking about shoring up the workforce and economy in Queens County for the next 20 years. So that's those three scenarios that I talked about. They were calculated using Statistics Canada population growth forecast for New Brunswick, and then adjusted for the demographic situation and trends specific to the county. So why do we want to know these three scenarios? Well, we want to know what's happening right now, what's the current trajectory between now and 2040. And we also want to know what would happen if we could maintain the same workforce size or if we could grow the workforce. So this is scenario number one. So this, again, I would suggest to you that there's no such thing as sort of a perfect population projection. Statistics Canada does these things for the province and they don't get it right. So it's impossible to say that this is exactly what will happen. But based on the current trends of natural population growth, that's births minus deaths, people moving in, people moving out, based on the current trends, we're projecting only a modest population decline across the county of about 900, dropping down to 9,400 population by 2040 from 10,300 today, which is the estimated population in 2020. And that would be an 8% decline. Now, the problem is that the workforce, the number of people actually working or in the workforce, will decline by 28% or 1,200. And the reason that is because, again, so much of that population now is over the age of 50. and will be heading into retirement within the next 20 years. So basically, your population decreases modestly, but your workforce decreases significantly. And what the implication of this are, well, you as I said before, you could see the loss of export industries like forestry. You could see more and more of the workforce employed in local services like home care and personal services. But again, that leaves less workers for other industries. So you might see businesses moving out to Fredericton or other urban centers. And of course, it would crimp our ability to grow new industries in Queens County. So if we wanted to maintain the current size of the workforce at 4,300, this model is projecting the population must increase by 15%, or about 1,500 people over the next 20 years. The workforce would stay at 4,300, and it would require a basically population attraction of approximately 150 per year. And the reason that is because you have more deaths and births in the county now. So you have to make up for that. Plus you need the new growth to actually grow the population. So that number works out to be about 150 people per year. And that can be from any source, other parts of New Brunswick, other parts of Canada, or immigrants. And what this would do is it would shore up the existing workforce and ensure that 20 years from now, there's still 4,300 people working in Queens County. Now, if we actually wanted to grow the workforce at a modest 0.5% rate per year, the population would have to increase by 27%. So this is, a fairly significant growth rate of somewhere around 1.3 to 1.5% per year across the county, or 2,700 in total. But it would lead to an increase in the workforce, and it would provide workers and employers and employees and entrepreneurs to actually grow economic activity across the county. But it would require the attraction of around 200 or more people per year on a net basis. So a real stretch goal possibly for the county, but it would take a significant inward migration of population across the county in order to meet this objective. So what can we conclude from this? And you will be able to download the full report with all the assumptions and the model methodology in the near future from the New Conversations website. But what our conclusions are here is we will require substantial population inflow. So Queens County has not grown its population overall in quite some time. And now we're saying if we want to shore up the workforce, we will need to attract between 150 and 200 people on a net basis from outside the county each year, starting very soon and carrying on through 2040. So it is, as I said, it's a stretch goal. Now, all of those obviously don't have to locate, say, in the town of Chipman or in the sort of the village of Chipman or the village of Minto, but across the county, we will need to see these kind of numbers if we want to grow the workforce across the county. Certainly not going to happen by itself. It will require a deliberate population growth focus for the region. Good news is there is efforts underway, and we'll talk about that in the panel, but Chipman is looking to address housing issues and other issues to make the community welcoming for newcomers. And, the reality is, I just put here the last bullet here, we have seen population growth of 1.3% in certain rural counties across Canada. So it's not without precedent. It would require, as I said, a considerable effort, but it's not like it hasn't happened elsewhere in Canada. And so the question is, can we achieve that here in rural areas in New Brunswick? So just a couple of things around a population growth plan for Queens County. So it's very, very important for local governments to get involved. It's good to see the mayor here tonight. And I think we've been seeing this around the province. There's a very strong support now from local government for population growth and population attraction. There's a very important role for the provincial government, of course, and the federal government too. But at the end of the day, people move into local communities, and we need to address this at a local level. And so it's very, very important for local businesses, local government leaders, local education providers, and so on to get engaged. Now, we are asking a lot more of our local politicians and our local government. 20 years ago, we wanted them to focus on sort of the basics of providing public services in the community. And nowadays we're saying you've got to be involved in housing, you've got to be involved in population attraction, you've got to be involved in community promotion, you've got to be involved in boosting the quality of life of your community so that you can compete with other communities across the country. So we're asking a lot more of our local government these days than we were 20 years ago. So we understand the pressures on them, but it's needed because, again, we need to have that leadership at the local level. So if you're going to grow the population, you need what we're calling here something more akin to a business plan. And the business plan would look at things like housing, look at support infrastructure, look at the education facilities and the immigrant support services. So a broad range of issues. We've talked earlier today in another community about daycare services and how if you attract young families and both parents are working, makes it very, very hard if there's no daycare services. So we're talking about thinking about all of the elements that are required to grow the population in a community like Chipman or a region like Queens County. So with that, I'll end my presentation and stop sharing my screen and try to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, David. We'll be starting our Q&A period, and I encourage anyone who wants to chime in person to do so, and to please use the raise hand symbol for us to give you permissions to unmute and to share your questions or reflections. The first question that's come in tonight, obviously, according to your projections, we need to attract a lot more people into Queens County. Is that really realistic?
So I think the good news is when you're talking about a smaller place and smaller communities like Chipman and Minto and so on, is you have a better opportunity to really know what's going on. So it's very hard, for example, in Moncton to understand all of the different businesses and the business owners that may want to retire in the next 10 or 15 years. But in a smaller community, you can identify that, and you can actually identify what services are missing in the community that you could attract an entrepreneur to fill. You can go to your large employers, which we already are in Chipman, and talk to Grand Lake Timber and say, how many workers are you going to need, and work on a specific plan for them. So the benefit to smaller communities is that you can actually zoom in and come up with very specific ways to attract people to the village or to the broader county. So I think that is a benefit. So even though the number seems intimidating, as long as we're going out and identifying what the needs are and then working to attract those folks to the county, I think it's a manageable goal. So we may not get to the 200 across the county every year, but I think we can really fill the workforce gaps and, crucially, in a place like Chipman, the entrepreneurial gaps, making sure we're providing local services to our residents.
Thank you so much, David. You did mention in your presentation 290 businesses in the county. What industries do you think risk leaving if there's not enough workers?
Yeah, one of the problems with being pretty close to Fredericton is that if you want to go to Costco, you have to go to Fredericton. So this is the challenge for smaller communities: is that if you don't have the entrepreneurs or the employees, that companies will just move the business or grow elsewhere in the larger center. And then what that means is the smaller communities don't have those services, so people have to leave the community to access the services, and eventually many of them might leave the community and actually move closer to the services. So what we really want to do is understand how big our community is and what the economic opportunities are, and make sure we have enough services, whether it's healthcare services like dentistry and physiotherapy and other types of services, but even retail services and restaurants and accommodations and all of that. So even though Minto and Chipman are small places, that same logic applies. So what is the population base in our area, and what services do we need to be able to provide here so that people don't have to drive into Fredericton to access those services? So that's, again, it's a challenge, but it's also a big opportunity for the area.
And a question that's actually related to what you were just mentioning around entrepreneurship opportunities. Are there real entrepreneurship opportunities in Queens County? Is it attractive to newcomer entrepreneurs coming in? Yeah,
so I'm not going to be cavalier about this and say it's all, sunshine and roses. But yes, I think there are opportunities there. For example, there are opportunities for freelance loggers and people working in the woods. There's potentially opportunities for truckers. There's and other natural resource types of opportunities. But then also business owners, services owners, right? So I talked earlier about restaurants and personal services and business services. So I think the onus is on the community and the provincial government to determine what those opportunities are, make the case, and then go out and find the entrepreneurs. And so we attract hundreds of immigrant entrepreneurs to New Brunswick every year. And what I'm saying is the best approach moving forward would be to look at communities like Chipman and Minto and across the province and say, okay, what are the opportunities? And then let's go out and find entrepreneurs that might be interested in moving to our community and filling that gap or filling that service in our community. And if it's an existing business owner looking to retire, the same thing would apply. We would try to find a potential investor to come and buy that business and maybe look at some sort of transition period. But it's the same approach. So again, because we're talking about smaller communities, I think we can be a little more targeted than maybe the larger cities.
Yeah. Thank you, David. In your introduction during your presentation, you mentioned an increase in public sector employment. Where is that increase coming from? Is it healthcare or is it other sectors?
Yeah, it's almost exclusively healthcare. So, education employment is maintaining roughly at the same level, public administration roughly the same level. So really we're looking at allocating more and more workers to the healthcare sector in the future if the trends continue. And again, we want to make sure we have good quality healthcare for our population, young and old. So this isn't about saying how do we cut those costs, although we do have to look at efficiencies in healthcare. But what we're really talking about is making sure we have a strong economic base so that we can raise the taxes to sustainably fund the healthcare system.
Right. How does Queens County compare to other rural regions in the province?
I knew you were going to ask me that question, Nicole. Well, I think of the 15 we did, Queens County, there's a couple of others, but this one is basically facing the largest challenge. So if you look at those population growth numbers or slight population decline numbers, so I think that that's a call to action. And like I said, we are seeing action. Chipman is acting, and we're seeing other efforts around the area. But we do need to take it seriously now because the demographic situation in Queens County is worse than most other parts of the province. The county's median age is something around 57, 58. That means half the population is older than that and half is under. If you look at some of the urban centers, it's closer to 40. So it's an issue. But I think, again, as I said before, the value proposition is there. We've got beautiful rural communities. If you drive through that area, and I've been to Chipman very recently, Minto very recently, it's a beautiful part of New Brunswick. And you're reasonably close to Fredericton, which is actually a benefit as well as a challenge, right? But I think, it's time to start getting serious. We need to address housing. We need to address some of the other issues. But I would not be pessimistic about Queens County. I would be optimistic, and I would say let's get out there and get it done. And I think the province, and the federal government need to play a role there too. It's very hard to put all of this onto municipalities.
Yeah. Thank you. One last question before we move on to the panel. In terms of infrastructures that need to be strengthened in the regions, can you expand a little bit on that? What's the main pressing need?
Well, we've been talking about around the province, but the main pressing need is housing. And we're going to hear, I think, tonight about what Chipman is trying to do specifically around housing. But we have in the report that you will be able to download online. We show the trend in new homes built across Queens County going back to the 60s. And we went through a period where there were quite a few new homes being built, new dwellings, and that's dropped by over 50%, something like 75% in Queens County now compared to 20 and 30 years ago. So we really need to get developers interested in Queens County, in the town, the villages in the county, and that's hard. We're seeing that challenge across the province, but I think the biggest issue on the infrastructure front is very much housing. And then it's issues like support for newcomers, language training, looking at things like daycare, which again has come up several times now on this tour. And then just in general, how do you bring in and integrate a new population into smaller rural communities, which again is a challenge facing many areas of New Brunswick.
Great. Thank you so much, David. We'll be seeing you during the discussion period following the panel. I would like now to invite Mayor Atkinson back to the main stage, I would say. He's our first panelist for today. Mayor Atkinson has been the mayor of Chipman since 2016. He has a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Education, and Master's in Education, and was a teacher for 37 years, having taught in Barbados, the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and New Brunswick. Mayor Atkinson is also the chair of the Chipman Newcomer Settlement Program. Thank you very much, Your Worship, for being with us this evening. The screen is now yours. You're still on mute, Your Worship.
Oh, maybe it'll do it at the bottom. Okay. Our council, I see Keith is on there. I flipped through to see who was watching tonight. I see Deputy Mayor Keith West is on tonight. Our journey started in 16, and as you can see behind me, we've talked about the kind of things we had to do. We saw the demographics facing us with the Canadian population. I think, David, you'll correct me, I'm sure, but at around 53, and I think you just quoted the one here in New Brunswick at around 57 years of age. In our mill, which houses, J.D. Irving Mill, which houses 265 people every day, not including the truckers, the hundreds of trucks that come in and out of here every day. The average age in that mill is 57. And yes, we are working. We started some time ago, I guess probably inviting in to kind of help with this whole process, Francis McGuire, who was head of a co-op, to do a speech here and talking about that to help the community understand better the kinds of demographic crisis facing us. We knew that coming in 2016, and we have worked on it a lot. You know, it's been now 3 years in this journey with a sponsor, a person dedicated to newcomer settlement. Leah is our current person, and she's working on a daily basis and helping with that whole process. We call it the Chipman, you know, our NSP, really, our newcomer settlement program here as part of the Multicultural Association. And yes, we have funding until 2025. I see Doug on there as well. Doug's been involved in our Chipman Housing Association that we formed some time ago when we're still having growth challenges with that. I guess we probably done an infrastructure, $1 million infrastructure project that gave us 12 places for modular housing, of which 7 of those have been taken up. We have, I guess, attempted to do a variety of things in the meantime. We are working in a daycare here. There is no daycare in Chipman. And to your point, David, that's extremely important. Any of us would have to say that one of the most important things that we can do here is our inclusivity as new people move into our community. And I have become friends with some, but COVID, I have to say, has truncated a lot of my getting together with some of the people that I would have considered, especially that I would wanted to be involved with. HB Barton subdivision, we've acquired another 49 acres adjacent to that subdivision in the past period of time as a village council. And of course, we're working to see that developed. And yes, it's much easier said than done. Really, in truth, a community like Chipman is an economic driver in the province. We are not the service providers. We're not the cities so much where the services are. We are a real wealth generator in this community. And we want to see it continue in that way. And we want to see the jobs here expanding. Our council has just joined with Ignite Fredericton. Larry Shaw, in the last couple of weeks, had Larry out here doing a look from our winery through to Wiggasigum and seeing some of the things, and our council has joined that. We are in the process, I see Doug's on there too, forming the Chipman Area Business Development Association to support in some way, to find ways of looking for encouraging entrepreneurship and development, in some cases in conjunction with Irving, and in other cases separate entirely. we have a wonderful place here that we are working to develop. We have done very poor job in terms of tourism development and that kind of thing. Those kinds of seasonal jobs, those kind of things that might help us, whether it's four-wheeling, snowmobiling, any of those kinds of things. Those are important things for us to develop, and we've worked on those, but we have a long way to go. So that's a little bit of my 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Any comments or questions?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We'll actually be taking questions during the discussion period following the panel. So we'll be seeing you during the discussion. Now I would like to introduce our second panelist, Salomeo Costa. Salomeo is from Brazil. He was a forest machine operator in Brazil and was given the opportunity to attend an Irving job fair. And it was there that he learned of the prospect of life in Chipman. He could see this as being a great place to not only work, but to have his family grow and develop. He was living in a city with a population of 100,000, which is quite drastic, difference in terms of population numbers than Chipman. But the idea of working and raising his family in a small rural region that was safe was very important to him. He's here with his wife and 3 children. They're all learning English, going to school, and have great prospects moving forward. Thank you so much, Salomeo, for being with us today and for sharing your newcomer immigration story and your experience. The screen is now yours.
You're welcome. First of all, I'd like to be grateful for the opportunity to talk a little bit about myself in the project to build a life in Canada. And I'm here to answer your questions and something like that.
Salomeo, so from your intro, the information that you shared with us today, safety was a big reason why you came to Chipman, a rural area, as well as the job, obviously. How has been your experience, getting connected with the community here, aside from your employment?
Yeah, when I was in Brazil, I have heard that Canada needed a booster in the workforce, and I participated from an interview for J.D. Irving, and I could see that I could contribute for the development of Canada. And despite living from a big city to a small place here in Chipman, I could see an opportunity to help the community with not only with my workforce, but with my family established in Chipman, and help the development of the village. And I can't deny that we had a warm welcome by the community, the mayor, all the newcomer settlement coordinator, Lee Stevenson, and the Irving have a great job to support us here, and we can look forward and see a chance to grow our children here and participate of the development. As we can see, the numbers about the population are not so great, and the forecast in the future is not so good because the elderly probably retire in a short time, but we are here to help. And I heard that a lot of other newcomers are coming to help us to to develop our community.
Thank you so much, Salomeo. Could you talk a little bit about the experience of your family being here and of your children at the schools?
Yeah, they could see, they could face a new experience here. We could think about the difficulties with the language, with the climate, and a different weather here, and a different culture. But I think we had most difficult time because of the COVID. What we have planned for the first 3 months, we had difficulties to achieve, and I have to wait for them about 10 months. It was really difficult because I can't deny that I was very concerned about they living in Brazil and I'm living here very, very far. And I couldn't help them. And I had to stay here working for them, but couldn't give all the support they needed, in fact.
Thank you so much for your answer, Salomeo. One question I would say is, how would you, what were the top barriers for you coming into Chipman?
I think the COVID, because the COVID changed all the interaction that I planned to have with the community. English class, for example, interact with people of the village. I think I could know better if we had in different times when we could go to a place and the kids go to church and the school and another place when they could interact with the other children. And I think it could be better. The COVID was the worst one.
Thank you so much, Salomeo. We'll be seeing you back during the discussion period. Now I would like to introduce a special feature video that we'll be sharing with you. It's from Ernest Volk, who was supposed to be our third panelist. However, unfortunately, he's unable to be with us today. He and the Rural Newcomer Settlement Coordinator for the Grand Lake region, Leah Stevenson, put together a video for us to share with you. It's about his experience coming here. I'm sure a lot of our participants tonight know about Ernest. He's a great success story in the region. So now I'll be asking my colleague Rachel to share the video with all of you.
One of our panelist successes who could not be here tonight because he is playing his first game against St. Thomas University. Good evening. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ernest Volk, and I'm a student of University of New Brunswick, and I play basketball out there too.
All right, Ernest, can you tell us what brought you here to New Brunswick and especially in Chipman?
So my father was looking for a job, and he found an advertisement on the social media that there was a job fair in Kyiv, and he attended it, and he got accepted, and he moved to Chipman in 2017.
All right, so after your father came, how long was it before you came, and what did you do when you got here?
So my father spent 1 year here without me and mom, and next year in 2018 I moved in here with my dad, and I started learning English. I started practicing speaking a little bit because before I could only write and read. I could understand English, but I couldn't speak, and then I started learning English, and Chipman high school. Teachers out there, they helped me to learn it. And then by the end of my grade 12, my marks were above 80% and I could speak English like easy.
So I understand you went to Chipman Forest Avenue School and you learned English there. What is another one of your success stories from the school?
I've been playing basketball since 2012, and by the time I got here, I wanted to play basketball even more, continue playing basketball, and I played basketball at the high school with our Chipman Forest Avenue guys, and my success was that in the grade 12 I got MVP award for this like season MVP, and we got to sectionals, but we lost it there. But that was a great success for our team because they never made it before, and that's how I got recruited for a UNB team.
So you're actually playing for the University Reds, is that what it's called?
Yes, University of Brunswick Reds.
Okay, good. Ernest, what challenges would you find were the most difficult for you when you came?
Well, the most difficult challenges that I face is that new language. I couldn't speak, I couldn't communicate with my peers, with my guys the same age. I wanted to talk to them, I wanted to hang out with them, but I couldn't for first year because I had to learn English and stuff. And the other challenge that I faced, it was like I left my family at home, my grandfather, my grandmother, my best friends out there, my cousins, and it was hard, but you get used to that and you find your new friends along the way. That's along the way when you learn English and stuff.
So Ernest, when you arrived, what type of supports did you receive?
One of the first supporters was the mayor of Chipman, Carson Atkinson, because he is friends with my dad, and he helped me a lot, like just guiding me through along the way. Then the staff members from the school, they helped me a lot, especially the teacher Julie McNeil, because she tutored me grade 11, the first semester of grade 11. Then everyone in the school was really nice to me, and they were ready to help me anytime that I asked questions. They were really open to me. And then in my grade 12, Leah Stevenson from NSP program, she helped me a lot with my student loan for university. She helped me a lot with scholarships for university. Yeah, that's people that helped me through the way, and I'm really thankful to them.
If there's one thing that you could take from your experience, what is the one thing that you would suggest?
The one thing that I would suggest is to have like formal training English classes for newcomers or for people who don't really speak good English or don't speak it at all, just to help them integrate into the society, and then they can even find the jobs, because with no English you can't find really a job, right? So that would be really helpful. As my mom right now, she has been struggling with English for 2 years, and I think that it would be beneficial for her if they start some sort of English classes.
How do you feel your situation is now compared to when you first arrived?
I feel as though my transition has been successful after only being in Canada for 3 years, and I think that I have learned the English language pretty good to receive a GPA of 3.1 in university in my first year, and I'm really proud of myself, and I'm thankful for anybody who helped me to do that.
So in closing, do you feel that coming to a smaller rural community was beneficial to you?
I think that it was beneficial for me for sure, because teachers in the school, they were ready to help me anytime. And I don't think that I would receive the same thing in the bigger community, because in the bigger community, lots of students, no one really cares about you, like, because you're only one out of thousands of people. And here, like, they're like family, and they treat you like just part of family, and you feel really comfortable in the small community, especially in the chip.
So that was Ernest's contribution for tonight's discussion. And I really want to thank Leah for taking the time, her and Ernest, to put together this video. Leah's with us tonight, so thank you so much. I would like to now present our fourth and last panelist for today, Liz Bailey. Liz is the principal of Chipman Elementary School, and she's a product of early French immersion from a small rural neighboring community. Liz graduated from Minto Memorial High School in 1987. She received a Bachelor of Education from UNB in 1991 and a Diploma in Advanced Undergraduate Studies in 1998, as well as a Master's in Education in 2003. Thank you so much, Liz, for being with us tonight and for bringing forward, the perspective of a school in the region. So the screen is yours to share your experience and what's been happening at the elementary school.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I was asked to share the positive outcomes as a result of having our newcomer students at our school. So Chipman Elementary is a small K-5 school, and we offer the English Prime program, and our population hovers around 100 students K-5. And the newcomers have enhanced our population growth this year, which we are very grateful. And we currently have 8 newcomers enrolled at Chipman Elementary School. And having the newcomers have created positive effects on all of our students. And I think one of the biggest things is the diversity that we have now in our classrooms, and to see the students and the friendships that are interacting and the friendships that are being made. The newcomers are very happy and they're engaged in their learning, and they're eager and determined to tell their stories and to make that communication happen. And like Ernest said in his video, it is a barrier at first, and we have communication apps, but really we rely less on those apps now for our communication. But the diversity in the classroom that has created such an awareness to our students and about different populations, different races, different cultures. And our students are learning about different traditions around the world. We really experienced with our Brazil students this year, they didn't come to school on Halloween. And then that's not such a fun event for them as it is for us in Chipman. But yet they outdid us on Valentine's Day. They bought each kid in the class treat bags that you would receive at a birthday party. So it's just learning about the different traditions and cultural things from our newcomers. Definitely for the newcomers and building their language, as Ernest said as well. But as the newcomers are learning English, they are sharing their home language as well with their classmates. And our students are equally eager to learn the days of the week, the months of the year, their numbers. We sing, if there's a birthday in the class, they're singing it in English as well as in the newcomers' language. So that's been positive. And the kids are eager to learn languages. They're telling me out on the playground, I know how to say this word in Portuguese and so forth. So I think it's stimulated an interest. And the other great thing about it is, and I think particularly of our grade 1 class, one of our student who is actually one of ours and a low achiever, but he's able to go help Yago. So he even feels empowered because he can help someone instead of someone always helping him. So those are positive things that we're seeing. I think as well, geographically, it has opened up that natural curiosity about the world. So our kids are seeing where they came from on the maps, and they're seeing where we are in Chipman, and we're looking at different possibilities in different places in the world around them. So I think that's great for all of our students. As our students are a little older in the upper grades, I'm seeing a lot more of how it cultivates open-mindedness. With the students in the diverse classrooms, they have different opinions and different thoughts and different cultural backgrounds that leads to deeper understanding. And it's, I believe it's the questioning, and they bring so much into the conversations. And in addition, I believe that having our students within our building, our newcomers, and building on diversity, we are reducing biases. So overall, the authentic situation at our school, it's a win-win for all of us. There's numerous ripple effects that have enhanced our learning environments. And I think as students graduate and enter the work world, they're going to be better equipped for this global economy. And our global citizenship is definitely going to be strengthened as a result of having the immigration and the newcomers to come to our school. And I would have to say, if I have a couple more minutes, Nicole, we've had huge support from our district, and I can't say enough about that. I don't think there's anything that I've asked for that I've been declined upon. So we're very grateful for that. We have had opportunities to provide PL days to 3 of our teachers, as well as our tutor. Students receive English language tutoring pull-out 5.5 hours per week. Their English Additional Language Center is set up with progress reports that go out to families in December and May. So we really know what we're targeting in the English language skills. All kinds of resources. One of our PL, it was suggested that we should have books in our classrooms in the target language or the newcomers language. So we went out and we purchased books for those kids to have in hand. We have all kinds of things on multimedia and computers, but we know the importance of putting books in students' hands, and we went out and we bought those, and some of them are even bilingual books from Portuguese to English, and the children were thrilled. Like they just tickled that they had books in their own language. So I think that's really important. Another thing, since we're so equipped this year because of COVID and with teams, and they were suggesting that, and we're in bubbles in the classroom because of the pandemic, but we can set the kids up in Teams meetings and they're talking in their own language as brain breaks. And that's been phenomenal, that they really enjoy that. And there's all kinds of workbooks and different things that's at their level to learn English that is in our classrooms for when we're doing literacy. But being immersed in the language is where we're seeing the biggest growth with those young children in our classrooms, and learning those foundation skills with their classmates. But definitely a win-win for all of us at Chipman Elementary. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Liz. I will now invite everybody, all the panelists and David back for a discussion period. And again, please submit your questions in the chat room or the chat box in Zoom, and or you can also chime in person. The first question actually that's come in is for Liz. David mentioned the effect of immigration on the K-12 school system during his presentation. Are you feeling the effects of that right now as you look at your school and other schools in the region?
Well, I think I know definitely from Chipman Elementary, David, that we've seen the most in the last 3 years. We've had quite a few from the Latvians who went to work at Irving, as well as our Brazilian families. So, and I'm not so sure that my counterparts in Cambridge Narrows or Minto have had these students. So I think it's Chipman Forest Avenue and Chipman Elementary have had the direct effect in Queens County.
Okay, and how you mentioned, support for teachers and PL days for them. How have they adapted to this growing diverse student populations at the school?
It's really been a new breath of fresh air for us. We've embraced it. And teachers, I think it's important at the elementary level. I think it's easier at the elementary level, and the tutor and I had this conversation the other night as well. It's because we're teaching those fundamental skills, and the teachers are doing the best we can, and we're trying to meet the needs. We do it every day with our own students. It's called differentiation. You meet the kids where they're at and you move them forward along the continuum. And right now, we're not focused on curricular outcomes for our newcomers, but we're definitely looking at the social emotional wellness side and the language, English language.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. The next question is for Mayor Atkinson. Could you expand a little bit on what's been happening locally to tackle the housing issue?
Repeat the question, please.
Could you expand a little bit on what's happening locally to tackle the housing issue? Is one question that's coming.
I'd like to turn that over to the chair but anyway, I'll field that a bit. Look, we 3.5 years ago, we started that process to develop some of our own. We've tried to encourage local development where possible, but for many people in the area, the banks have not been supportive of small rural areas in terms of funding, wanting to fund housing in outlying areas, in spite of the fact that we are a wealth generator within the province as a small rural area. As I know David referred to the Richard Saillon, his comments recently and all that kind of thing, or Donald Savoy, or any of the kinds of people that we look at when we're talking about this. We are still working on it, and I will be joining with Doug. I see Doug is on here tonight, Doug Tyler, and others are working to try and help address that issue. It's an ongoing challenge, especially in every rural community.
Thank you so much, Mayor Atkinson. David, do you have anything to add on the housing sector?
No, I think what Chipman has done has been good in terms of the sort of transitional housing, and now looking at how we expand that, and quite frankly around the province. But ultimately, we have to have an expansion of housing in Chipman and around the county if we're going to attract more population. People are retiring; they're not leaving the region, so that means if we want to fill the gap in the workforce, we have to actually have more housing. So there's a lot of good minds thinking about this, but the mayor's right. Eventually, we have to get developers interested in rural areas and also at building reasonably priced housing in rural areas as well.
Great, thank you so much, David. The next question is for Salameo. You spoke a lot about the challenges that you faced, especially with COVID and language. Could you speak a little bit about what has helped you? What was, a success or an obstacle that you were able to overcome?
Yes. About the COVID, how I have said before, probably is different for everyone, but in my case, I needed to speak English, but I had some difficulties to be in the class, to learn the language. In some aspects, this is very, very difficult, because if you learn something in the class, you have no place to go and practice it, because we really learn when we practice, when we make it happen. And I had this difficulty about the learning of the language. But the village, the newcomers settlement, and the J.D. Irving set some structure, and all of us had the support that we need to start studying in the following week that we arrived in Canada. And it was critical. What we know today, despite the difficulties of contact with native speakers, is because they provided the full support to learn what we know today. So I think it was a big challenge for me, but they were prepared to support us.
Great, thank you so much, Salomeo. I actually would like to ask Leah Stevenson a question. Leah, I know you weren't prepared to chime in today, but a question has come in that I think you would be able to shed some light on, or additional light on. The subject of language courses for adults and the need for help with language in the region has come up a lot today. Could you expand a little bit on that need and on the effects of COVID, and what type of language support is there in the region, and what still needs to be secured moving forward, especially as we prepare to welcome more newcomers?
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, I would like to say that English language has been on my radar since I took this position 2 years ago. In a perfect world, we would have English language training every day and some evenings for those that are working in the day. Right now, I can say that we have worked hard and we're developing a pilot project. So there is something coming up. It's not exactly what we'd like, but it's a start, and it will give some language training to those families immediately. And this is what we need. We need something for when those families arrive, or the principal applicants, even when they first arrive, to, as Salomeo said, have that communication when you're learning the English language and you can communicate amongst each other. So yeah, that's been an issue from day one. So hopefully enough of us have band together and we can get something going in the rural regions. I know that there's something coming up, but I don't really want to say too much. But yes, there is something in the works.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leah. A question for Mayor Atkinson. In terms of community support for immigration and awareness raising, what do you see in your community right now? And is the community prepared to welcome newcomers, or is there more that needs to be done in terms of awareness raising locally?
Well, as I mentioned, and Keith is fully aware, starting off with Francis McGuire speaking about the importance of immigration, we are talking about that constantly. The demographics were the big issue that caused me, part of the reason it caused me to run for mayor in 2016. Those are the kind of big issues that we have to look at in our community. I don't know if I'm answering your question. What are the biggest challenges? What really is your core question? So
is the community supportive of immigration at a local level?
Well, I think so. I mean, definitely council is supportive of it. We've got Leah, who, by the way, I'll speak about that, and I've said it other places. She's a great advocate on behalf of the village, does a better job than many of us. COVID has set us back, I think, immeasurably, because we used to engage with people, but outside Salomeo and Zach and Ernest and a few others, this COVID situation has really frustrated us and made it so that, I used to visit Salomeo's place before his family came and the guys that were with him. I don't do that anymore. It's because of COVID, and it's been a real problem.
Yeah.
So the community, look, I came here as an outsider 100 years ago, and I'm still an outsider, but I'm mayor. You have to fight your way in, and I think we've got some good supports here. The biggest challenge that I see, and it's one that's been a bugbear for me for 40 years, no French immersion in Chipman. I know, Liz, that would be make some changes. We have to have French immersion in this community, because in most of the communities, if you're going to welcome newcomers, they want their kids in French immersion. Not to put too fine a point on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Atkinson. Liz, do you have anything to add on the French immersion point? Oh, you're on mute, Liz.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Carson, that it's, that option, we are New Brunswickers and we're in a bilingual province, and that option needs to be available to all of our students.
Yes.
Thank you. David, in terms of COVID, do you have any data on the impacts of COVID on Queens County?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of good data at the county or the local level, statistically speaking, but we do know, we saw a big reduction provincially in the number of newcomers settling in the province in 2021, 2020, mostly as a result of COVID-19. So I think the impacts, as the mayor indicated, have been sort of broad based and have set us back and set back our potential here. But we now need to move forward. We need to plow on in 2021 and get back to what we need to be doing to grow the community.
Great, thank you so much. Solomeo, how would you like to see your community grow in the coming years? Oh, you're on mute, Solomeo.
Sorry. I can see in the future, I really hope it's a little time from now that we can overcome the situation of the vaccine, and everyone can work hard to recover everything what we have lost in these 2 years of COVID. And we are here encouraged to work hard and make it happen despite what has happened to our economy. I know it's difficult if you hear the news about the overall aspect of Canada and the New Brunswick. You can see the numbers are not good, but I feel like making part of the community. So I'm ready to face this problem as mine and help it to quit and help it to resolve and be part of the solution. That's what I think. And I'm here with my family to contribute for that.
Thank you so much, Solomeo. The last question that's come in is for Liz as well, and it has to do with the COVID impacts on newcomer youth and families. What have you observed with, at the elementary in terms, how has COVID impacted the students and their families?
Well, Chipman Elementary is a pretty welcoming spot within the community, and I feel that the pandemic has affected us in that area. We did make some provisions. We allowed the moms in with Leah on our initial tour with the students. That was an exceptional situation, but we really haven't had a lot of contact with the moms and the families. Now I say that for myself, not to the degree that I would typically have. Teachers, definitely, they have an app and they have homework sheets, and they, I guess you would say, text back and forth, and you can tell that the parents are Googling it and sending it to them. And so there's been that means of communication. Obviously, we've had our, just like every other parent this year, because of the pandemic, parent-teacher interviews have been happening over the telephone or by Teams meetings. And then we have the playground zones and we have bubbles. So that was another barrier for us. But like I said, this Teams meeting, and allow them to get together on a computer like we're doing here this evening, and to be able speaking. And I can see that would easily be an opportunity for the adults as well, virtually, just to get together and chat. And but the kids, the grade 3s have 3 of them together, so that's a nice grouping. There's 2 in grade 1, so again, they don't feel alone. And then one girl in grade 4, but we also have a Latvian student there. So it's a lot of connections, and I really feel strongly that at Chipman Elementary, we look after one another and we embrace these children in change. And I really feel that they feel comfortable and the staff feel comfortable, and it's just been a positive experience for us.
I want to congratulate both schools on that welcoming nature. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear it. Liz, thank you so much for sharing. I would like to now kind of open the floor for anyone who would like to share anything before we conclude this evening session. Okay, so I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for everyone who's made the time for us this evening. We truly thank you for your participation, for your engagement, and we hope that the information that we shared today and the stories that you heard will inform, future action, collaborations, and really initiatives happening at a local level. You will be able to download David's presentation as well as the regional report that he developed for Queens County in the coming days off of the New Conversations website. So hopefully that will also inform future planning at the local level. And this session is recorded and will be available on the website as well. And with that, I would like to end the session tonight, and hope you guys have a good evening. Thank you so much for participating tonight.
Thank you.